it's like going back to the two camps of people, where you have people that want to buy things for reliability and long term, and you have people that are willing to buy stuff new and cycle them before they're out of warranty. My biggest concern, honestly, is this current kind of just smattering of vehicles from 2020 on, whether it's GM or Toyota or Ford. My concern is, what are these vehicles going to do outside of warranty, like the majority of them, if they're already having these failures, and it's not all of them that are failing. It's whatever, 1%, 5%. But if it's already at 1% or 5% in the first 30,000 miles of life or 50,000 miles of life, it's like, man, what's that going to look like for the secondhand market? And then you'll have these folks that maybe are stretching to buy something, because they couldn't afford the new one, but they can afford that used one at like 28,000 or 30,000. And it's like they're stretching, they have a higher interest rate, and then they're at 70,000 miles and the engine goes, and they tell them it's 25 grand. It's like, that's not acceptable. Like transmissions are, I was looking at General Motors, newest 10-speed. If you have to buy that out of pocket, or the Ford, it's about 10 grand just for and that used to be a $3,000, $3,500. Like if your transmission went out in 150, it was like, yeah, it sucks, but it didn't wreck you. And now It's like, buy something out of warranty and normal people get financially wrecked. I think that's what bugs me the most about it. And it's probably not even a huge percentage of them, but if it becomes a big percentage, man, we could see a massive amount of just people in trouble, debt, bankrupt, whatever,
Sure. Yeah, no, it definitely, there's an affordability problem in the market. There's a big one there. Every CEO is talking about, there's affordability problem when it comes to used market as well. There's a lot of concerns. I mean, things are expensive. I had a friend who just had a Ram 3/4 ton. It was $15,000 for new transmission for that truck.
Yeah.
I put a 375 horsepower V8 in my 62, and it was $6,000 for the engine and $4,000 for the transmission. And that's just because prices have gone up. Things have gotten expensive. There's two sides of the argument, right? There's a side that says that when something fails, it is more expensive. There is zero doubt. And what makes me upset are the sensors, right? So it's behind the exhaust manifold back end. You got to do this Gumby looking thing, twist your arm back in to get this $20 sensor, right? And it crapped the entire engine out to get this damn little sensor out. That drives me nuts. Yeah. And I've talked to engineers about that. And sometimes it's lazy engineering for sure. Sometimes it's junior engineering. It makes me mad about that stuff. But there's also the argument that says that vehicles are lasting longer. The average age of the vehicle on the fleet right now for the U.S. fleet is 14 years old. I mean, people are driving vehicles longer than they used to. I think actually the industry's got a different problem. I think they're really having a problem because they're building vehicles too good these days, in that a lot of vehicles are lasting longer than they probably should have. And the scrap yard around me is really empty these days because there's not many vehicles breaking down as much as they used to be. It's very interesting the way the world has changed. And I think you have a very valid viewpoint. There's definitely that concern for that next generation customer. My concern is the computers and the copper wiring. I don't think the engines, transmissions, yes, as well, but I don't think engines are that as unreliable as used to be. I think transmissions have some problems. I think there's definitely some issues there. But I think about the copper wiring in the vehicles, the computers, and the screens. Like, how much is that big infotainment screen going to cost to replace? And that's a real concern. Do they fail that often? It's hard to figure out this new era we're in when you have guys like you and I that used to do the shady tree mechanic stuff and fix your own vehicles. And now you can't fix your own vehicles, but you don't need to fix them as often. But if something goes wrong, it is really expensive to fix.
Do you ever talk to GM guys about the 10-speed with this valve body on back order? And I talked to Next Gen Diesel, the company that developed a fix for it essentially, and it took them a couple of years to engineer just different valves and O-rings for that valve body. They tried really hard to get GM's ear and to tell them they had a problem and to try to basically help General Motors and say, hey, this is going to become a problem. We see it happening. We've developed a fix for it, probably telling them, hey, you can buy the fix from us or license it or whatever. Sure. And they couldn't get any traction. And now here we are 2 years later. I see so many people and hundreds of comments on just a small video that I have of people 2022, 2023, 2024. their trucks are sitting for 3 months,
Yeah.
and they got a loaner. And then you see the most frustrating part to me is like manufacturers have to start being careful about this. If you're willing to manufacture brand new trucks and pack lots full with brand new trucks, but then tell people that you can't get that one part that's this big and it's on back order, you're telling people that you're prioritizing new sales over the truck that they sold you. And after they sold it to you, they don't care. Like, that's essentially what you're telling people. And I think General Motors had a great year last year, but they have to be careful.
I have talked to engineers about this stuff, and I've talked to marketing about this stuff too. There's two things to this. First of all, engineers do watch those other videos because, again, engineers are people too, and they're industry, and they get home from work and they're watching your channel, my channel, and Bank's diesel channel, and they're watching all these different channels, right? And they have two viewpoints in this. First of all, the viewpoint is, yeah, Banks and Next Gen Diesel can create new parts, and that's fine, and they can make new changes, and engineers like those changes, right? So, like, I put the new oil pan on my diesel, and I know the engineer watched those videos, and I'm sure he wanted to copy the design, but he can't because he's got to file a patent, and he's got to get a supplier on board. He can't steal the idea, right? That's a problem. Now, on the valve body stuff, that pisses off engineers no end. Like, they hate the fact your truck's in dealership. Like, they will call up every Tom, Dick, and Harry they know in the company and try to get part to you faster. The problem that people don't understand is that manufacturing is based now on a just-in-time delivery. So what that means is there is no stockpile of parts. So in factories, they do just-in-time delivery. So if you're going to build a truck, somebody brings a cart over and parks it in front of you, and you have just the bolts you need for that day. The next bolts are coming in, the shipment coming in later on tonight. They don't have these warehouses of different parts. And so just-in-time delivery keeps costs down because you're not paying inventory and overhead on additional parts in the factory. And it keeps suppliers going because they know they're going to build 50 parts every day and keep going. But what happens is, in a warranty situation, like a valve body situation, is now you have to go to the supplier and say, hey, we know you're delivering this many parts, but now we need you to deliver this many parts for warranty. That's a hard thing from a supplier standpoint, because supplier standpoint, and that's, tariffs and things are a big part of this as well, is they have to find warm bodies to put in the assembly line to make new parts. Because you may have had a bad batch of parts. You may have had a spec came out, whatever. And, a truck is really a variety of parts from suppliers. And suppliers do really good jobs. And sometimes they have a bad guy who does a bad job because you have tier 1 suppliers, tier 2 suppliers, tier 3 suppliers. It's a more big problem when a new vehicle comes out. Remember when the Tundra came out in 2022, they had the actuator problem. The turbo actuator was causing a problem. I think what it was. Well,
wastegate issue, yeah.
The wastegate issue. Well, they only had enough parts to build the first run of trucks. So the guys who got that first wastegate actuator issue had to wait a longer period of time because they didn't have enough extra parts to build that person. That's one of the downsides. So one of the upsides of buying a brand new vehicle off first comes out is typically it's like the best version of the vehicle you're going to have, because before the accountants get in there and they start nitpicking stuff, whatever. And I mean, you can drive vehicles year after year after year, and towards the end of the life of the vehicle, you can notice that the sound deadening's not as good and the materials aren't as good, whatever. You find these differences. If you have a problem with that first 2-3 months of that vehicle, you will be waiting a longer period of time than somebody else that came out with that later on, because just-in-time delivery, there's no extra parts being manufactured, and so you have this really supply chain issue going on. And that's the Tundra was a good example of that. They launched that during COVID when the supply chain issues and stuff like that going on. They were still dealing with that kind of stuff, and they had a lot of problems building Tundras because they didn't have enough parts. They didn't have enough suppliers, because suppliers go up and down, and you start doing the thing is, like, every plant I've been to in the past 3 or 4 years has job openings. They can't fill the job openings at the manufacturer. Well, the manufacturer has the best UAW jobs. Guess what? Supplier level 3 is not going to get. Supplier 2 level is going to get. Supplier 1 is not going to get. So from a consumer standpoint, you're going, well, that's BS. I want a part tomorrow. You're buying a brand new vehicle. I can go to the dealership lot, pull the part off, and then a brand new vehicle part, right? But it's not as simple as that, because when you look at the supply chain, just-in-time manufacturing, and how the whole system works, it really creates those problems.
Yeah, well, and then there's the argument of they shouldn't be having this problem in the first place on these new vehicles.
Right.
I think that's the frustrating part for people. You see a lot of those. Do you ever watch Tow Truck Dustin's channel? He's got
Yeah.
I mean, all those fuel pump issues with these brand new GMs, and he'll get it off the truck, and then the guy walks out of the dealership with a new fuel pump, and he sticks it in, and he's done. Or it's a module or something. He's done before it's off the flatbed, and it's like they know what's going on, and it probably takes a while to the whole testing procedure, and then the restrictions. It's like your time to react to a problem like this is hindered because of all of probably the EPA, probably all sorts of things, where they have to meet these certain standards. They got certified at some level, and they got to make sure that the new parts fit in that little.
It's about a
hole,
year. It's about a year, more than a year.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised. I mean, how long it takes for them to identify the problem, to narrow it down to a supply chain issue or a manufacturing issue, to figure out what really happened. If is it a design issue, is it a part issue, whatever, and then go through the clients, work through suppliers, get it certified, and then get it out. About a year.